Dear colleagues, the first item on today's agenda is the energy transition in the EU fisheries and aquaculture sectors. This item will be taken together with an AOB item requested by Italy, Bulgaria, Estonia, Latvia and Portugal, calling for urgent actions to address the crisis in these industries. The energy transition is a topic of great interest both to Member States and the Commission, and has recently gained additional importance due to the conflict in the Middle East. In February, the DG Mare organized the second high-level conference on energy transition in the EU fisheries and aquaculture sector. This event was an opportunity to share and discuss energy transition ambitions and vision, as well as joint recommendations developed in the framework of the Energy Transition Partnership. These discussions were a valuable input for the energy transition roadmap that the Commission is planning to present after the summer. The Presidency would like to hold an exchange in order to give the right recommendation and guidance by the Council. In order to facilitate the discussion, we've given three questions in the information note, which have to do with the regulatory change and simplification, investment and financing, as well as future business models relevant for the energy transition. I will first invite the Commission to share their views and plans on the energy transition. Dear Commissioner, dear Kostas, the floor is yours. Thank you, Maria.
Ministers, I thank the Presidency for the initiative to put this item on the agenda of the Agri-Fish Council. Energy transition is critical for the future of our sector. Therefore, I am happy to present the progress made so far, especially in light of the current international geopolitical context and of the difficulties that the sector is currently facing. The Energy Transition Initiative was originally conceived 3 years ago as a response to skyrocketing energy prices following Russia's aggression against Ukraine. The recent impact of the Middle East conflict on fuel prices brings again to the fore the risks associated with the fossil fuel dependency in fisheries. It highlights the urgency of accelerating the energy transition in EU fisheries and aquaculture. And this is key for two main reasons. Firstly, to reduce the sector's vulnerability to volatile energy prices, and secondly, to improve environmental performance. Since the first Commission communication in 2023, stakeholders across the sector, supported by Member States and regional authorities, have undertaken actions towards fleet and fish farm transitions. The Commission has been facilitating this work through the Energy Transition Partnership. Today, this partnership is recognised as a hub for innovative projects and best practice exchanges among over 600 stakeholders from various sectors. The 10 working groups within the partnership have recently delivered initial recommendations essential in shaping the upcoming Commission's roadmap for energy transition. These were presented last February in the high-level conference, which gathered representatives from the industry, the civil society, the finance sector, regional authorities and international organizations like the OECD. Our ambition is clear. We want to achieve climate neutrality by 2050. We want to move away from fossil fuel dependency towards energy solutions that preserve our ecosystems, protect the sector from future energy shocks, and stimulate the blue economy and coastal communities. Financial and technical challenges persist as the technology to decarbonize and modernize the fisheries sector is still developing. Investments are still insufficient and access to alternative energy sources limited. Port infrastructure remains inadequate and attracting new generations of fishers proves difficult in a sector which struggles to attract private investment. However, progress continues with the launch of the Energy Transition Partnership Ambassador Programme, equipping Member States authorities to spread knowledge and support stakeholders. The recently launched initiative titled Energy Transition Partnership Champions recognizes and promotes innovative projects. Finally, 2 new studies offer insights on pathways for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Energy transition is key to the competitiveness of the sector. A truly future-proof and attractive sector needs business models that are not only viable, but also flexible and sustainable. This will make fisheries attractive for investors, while public funds from MFAF to Horizon Europe are important for research and innovation. Private investments are essential to ensure profitable fleets supported by thriving stocks. This leads me to another essential element of our policy on energy transition. We need to ensure good fisheries management. Ensuring the sustainable balance between the size and the catching capacity of the EU fishing fleet is crucial, both for economic and for conservation reasons. In this context, it is important that Member States work on the energy transition within their capacity limits, so that our industry remains socially, economically, and environmentally competitive. All efforts towards energy transition are closely linked to broader questions on the future of fisheries and aquaculture, such as their role in food systems and global competitiveness. This is why the Energy Transition Roadmap will be delivered as part of the Vision 2040 and the Strategy for Fisheries External Action, forming a coherent package to be adopted by the Commission during the third quarter of 2026. The Vision 2040 for EU fisheries and aquaculture will build on the European Ocean Pact and will be supported by the findings of the ongoing comprehensive evaluation of the Common Fisheries Policy Regulation. Dear colleagues, during our recent exchanges, many of you recalled the importance of ensuring appropriate funding to help the sector transitioning. Please allow me to recall that Member States have opportunities to advance energy-efficient technologies in the fisheries sector through MFAF. To this end, I would encourage Member States to continue implementing their MFAF national programs and reducing administrative burden at national level. This will ensure smoother and faster absorption of funds. The Commission services stand ready to provide any help and support. At the same time, the Commission has heard the strong and repetitive calls from all interested parties for the need to improve MFAF. So we are looking into options to align the fund with the aspirations from the sector. Particular attention is given on how to facilitate energy transition while taking into account the current implementation rate and the remaining funds available. Lastly, it is also important and timely for Member States to start working on reflecting on how to enhance the nexus between investments and reforms. This will ensure a smooth transition from the current to the new delivery model of the next MFF. Dear colleagues, the energy transition is pivotal for the sector's competitiveness and a building block to our future vision. It won't happen overnight, yet the long-lasting positive effects are worth it. Together we are navigating towards a sustainable and resilient future for our sector. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Kostas. I would like to give the floor now to the Italian minister, who's going to talk about the call for urgent action in order to address the crisis in the EU fisheries and aquaculture on behalf of the aforementioned delegation supporting it. Francesco, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Maria, for this praise. And a warm welcome to the ministers from Bulgaria and the Netherlands. And I'd like to thank Commissioner Cadiz for the presentation. And I would also like to thank you for focusing on the energy transition topic, which requires all of our attention and that allows me to share the point that we're presenting together with the countries aforementioned. This is creating huge concerns for the operators in the aquaculture and fisheries sector. It has caused a chain reaction with consequences from an occupational standpoint, with people leaving their jobs and a paralysis of the fishing market. In light of this crisis, we ask for the European Commission to assess a revision of the MFAF regulation to promote direct support for businesses in this sector to offset the exceptional increase in operating costs and safeguard employment levels, modernising hulls and propulsion system to encourage the transition to more sustainable and efficient engines, reducing time spent at sea while maintaining the same catch, attracting new generations through incentives that make working on board economically attractive and safe, ensuring the generational turnover that is essential for the future of the sector, supporting production continuity for fishing businesses, flexibility and simplified procedures. It is essential to act quickly to ensure the future of a sector that can no longer sustain events that threaten its very survival. Regarding the energy transition proposed by the Presidency, I believe that regulatory reforms must go beyond the mere administrative simplification. The concept of energy transition should be an integral part of the reform of the CFP, but fleet renewal and the deployment of new infrastructure can't occur without dedicated funds. We have financial instruments available, but the resources of the new MFF are insufficient and will hardly ensure that the energy transition actually take place. We must ensure a level playing field for European fishers. This can be achieved only by identifying common internal standards through trade policy instruments and stricter import controls on the fishing of third countries. The high dependence on fossil fuels makes the fishing industry vulnerable to fluctuations in energy prices and renewable sources of energy, ensuring its supply. It is essential to create more attractive markets in order to encourage innovative business models and focusing on the EU in particular. Italy is willing to work together to achieve goals that must be shared by all in order to reach concrete objectives. And there is one item above all, which is the urgency of all of this.
Thank you, Francesco. Dear colleagues, I would now like to invite you to share your comments and answer the guiding questions of the Presidency related to energy transition, as well as any other comments on the AOB item by Italy. Germany has the floor. Markus.
Ja, vielen Dank,
Thank you very much, Maria. Dear Commissioner and dear colleagues, Germany is grateful to the President for putting the issue of the energy tradition in fisheries and aquaculture in the political spotlight. This background note demonstrates that we have a shared understanding of the multiple challenges that are facing the sector. These challenges and the urgency of addressing them are further underscored by Italy's initiative. Now it's time for us to put our money where our mouth is. And against this background, we do welcome the Commission's stated intent to propose an amendment to the MFAF regulation in order to overcome key regulatory barriers to the energy transition. The proposal is intended to enable a reduction in overcapacity while at the same time taking future-proofing steps towards climate neutrality in fishing. Also, the ongoing evaluation of the CFP should take into account a review of the definition of fishing capacity. We consider that adjusting the MFAF regulation to allow crisis measures to mitigate the increased energy costs, we consider that to be premature at this stage. However, at the same time, we should closely follow further developments. Now, another issue is financial support, which is key for us. Financial support for the transition, especially for cutters and coastal fisheries. If we were to adapt the MFAF regulation, this would allow existing funds to be used for that purpose. At the same time, we should also weigh up support for the energy transition in fisheries and agriculture when we design future support schemes. The financial capacity and the innovative ability of the sector is very limited, and the fisheries sector will not be able to cope with the transition on its own. Finally, investment in R&D plays a key role. For example, Germany supports the development of fishing vessels with alternative means of propulsion in both the North Sea and the Baltic. We're aware of similar initiatives taking place in other member states. Here we could, for example, imagine an even more fortified role for the Commission in taking stock of the relevant projects to allow us to leverage benefits, have synergies and make efficient use of the scarce resources that we have. In closing, Germany is keen to keep playing an active role in developing the energy transition roadmap. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus. The floor now goes to Belgium, followed by France and then the Netherlands. Hilde, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. Dear Kostas, we are grateful for this agenda item. Belgium agrees that the energy transition is a key issue in fishing and aquaculture as well as elsewhere. Our sector in Belgium has already taken major steps in the last 20 decades to become energy efficient. But we know from our contact with shipbuilders that it's hard to spot any evidence of a full-scale energy transition. I do see a number of necessary preconditions to it. For example, the need to boost capacity on board when we work with alternative fuels. The question here is whether the national ceiling will be enough. The costs of investing in energy transition or for energy efficient are huge. Family businesses with a vessel longer than 24 meters have to be allowed to access the support funds for this. If we really want to develop into the next generation of fishing vessels, then we must stop forbidding the access to new building of ships for the energy transition purposes. It's not really worthwhile making huge investments in aging hulls, old ships that no longer meet the new ideas of streamlined shipbuilding and design of the propeller screw. I also wish to thank my Italian colleague for raising the issue of the rise in fuel costs. Belgium, too, is very worried about this, and we are closely following developments. While we are working out the possibilities for giving support in this regard, Belgium asks for sufficient funds to have a level playing field between member states. Now, the issue of support once again demonstrates that energy efficiency and energy transition are crucial for the resilience of our sectors, and that we have to pull out all the stops to agree sufficient funds to stimulate that. The issue of modernisation, innovation and renewal keeps cropping up on our agenda, and we really need to grasp it by the roots. So I'm looking forward to our evaluation of the CFP, and I assure you Belgium will fully cooperate in revising the CFP in the interests of sustainable and resilient fishing. Thank you.
Thank you, Hilde. We now have France, then the Netherlands, followed by Poland.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Merci.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Commissioner. And thank you, Italy, for your warning us. I think that the war in the Middle East is showing us how vulnerable we are to energy crises with fuel costs which risk the survival of our companies. Certain boats can no longer go to sea. The situation of our fleet is being degraded, and yet we have all asked the Commission to carry out far-reaching changes. Thank you for your efforts, Mr. Commissioner. We need to accelerate those measures. There is urgency. Depuis 2022, the average age has gone from 32 to 34 for the age of ships. You cannot really be able to continue with such aged ships, particularly because of the energy crisis. Other fleets are being modernized, and you've got a lot of competitions and other developments are allowing us to show that competition can help us make advances. We need to provide urgent support to our fishermen, and we've also got to prepare for future, and we've got to lead to the decarbonisation of our fleet. France is going to notify the Commission that we adopt a direct aid for fishermen, and we would like intervention to take place quickly. I'd also like to ask the Commission to adopt the EMFF measures so that we provide 300 million euros. I think that this is too high a figure for the fleets to be invested on their own, and I think that we need to be able to invest in recent fleets, and we need to replace the older ships. France would like to remind you that PCP or CFR needs to be adapted, and we need to have gauges so that we can adapt new technologies. We would like to have a decarbonisation gauge, which would allow us to carry out new energies which can be put on new fishery boats. I think we need to react quickly. We need to accelerate these. We need to send a clear message, simplifying the rules without waiting for the next multi-annual framework. We've got to be able to work together to be able to maintain the centuries-old activities of fishermen in our territories. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Now the floor goes to the Netherlands, then Poland, then followed by Finland. Sylvia, you have the floor.
Dear colleagues and dear Commissioner, good to meet you all. My name is Sylvia Urkens, and I recently started as one of 2 ministers at the Department of Agriculture, Fisheries, Food Security and Nature in the Netherlands. And my mandate concerns, amongst others, food security, fisheries and horticulture. And I look forward to working with you all the upcoming years. And the energy transition in the fisheries and aquaculture sectors is a priority for me. The current situation with high oil prices shows us again how vulnerable the sector is. In the Netherlands, over half of the demersal fishing fleet is currently not going to sea due to high fuel prices. And it's important to prepare ourselves in case the situation persists or deteriorates further. And I thank Italy in this regard for addressing this issue in their AOB point. And I'm interested to hear the response of the Commissioner to Italy's point. Improving the energy efficiency of our fisheries reduces the reliance on fossil fuels and vulnerability to global oil prices. And to speed up reducing this reliance on imported fossil fuels, we need to do 3 things according to the Netherlands. First of all, we need to be able to support our fisheries and aquaculture sector in the energy transition. And this means that we need to remove obstacles in the regulatory framework for the energy transition, for example, in the state aid rules, like the example mentioned from my colleague by Belgium on vessels longer than 24 meters. Second of all, we need to stimulate innovation and research towards climate-neutral fisheries. Innovation is the only way forward to secure the ability to harvest food from our own oceans in the future. And we need to be open to innovative solutions based on the scientific facts. And I look forward to working also with other member states together on innovation. And third, we need to be ready when innovation is successful and remove barriers that hamper the rollout of proven techniques that reduce fuel consumption. There is a serious financing gap. The Dutch fleet mainly consists of family-owned businesses with difficult to access private finance. And the highly fluctuating fishing opportunities, insecure exemptions from the landing obligation and no guarantees access to fishing grounds hamper private investment. All possibilities should be explored when looking into ways to finance the energy transition of the fishery sector and remove regulatory obstacles where possible. And the Netherlands requests the Commissioner in this regard to take up the matter of a broad omnibus simplification package with urgency. And we're ready to have a thorough discussion on the matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. The floor now goes to Poland, followed by Finland and then Portugal. Stefan, you have the floor.
Dear Mary, Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen, we thank the Commission for the efforts it has made so far on the energy transition in fisheries and aquaculture. In terms of moving away from fossil fuels, it is crucial in ensuring food security and preserving the sector and fishing transitions for future generations. We see a need to simplify and align the rules with the intended objectives. They should be based on affordable solutions that do not create undue burdens and disadvantages for the fishing sector. Adequate funding is key to the transition, but to secure it, we need to assess the scope of needs and the appetite for change, particularly among fishermen. Revision of the current rules of the MFF is necessary to ensure transparent funding at the appropriate level that is necessary to support a just energy transition. We believe that the transition must go hand in hand with efforts to eradicate overfishing, to restore resources in a sustainable manner, and to support coastal communities. At the same time, it should take a holistic approach, covering engine replacement, modernization of vessels, and ports and infrastructure adaptation, while ensuring safety at sea. Now, in the context of Italy's request, we share the concerns expressed in the document. The currently observed increase in fuel prices may translate into a deterioration in the economic situation of entities operating in the fisheries and aquaculture. We therefore support the need to work on securing additional compensation measures under the MFF. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Stefan. Now the floor goes to Finland and Portugal and then Croatia. Sari, you have the floor.
Kiitos Maria ja Kostas.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Kostas. Thank you very much for this good background document and for organizing this important debate. The current legal constraints do not allow public funding to be allocated to energy transition interventions. I consider it important that the current regulation on the European Maritime, Fisheries and Aquaculture Fund be reviewed in a timely manner in order to facilitate the transition. In addition, it is important to ensure that rules related to fleet capacity do not hinder investments that would be necessary to achieve the transition. It is positive that the Commission is considering the need for change, and we are supporting the Commission in this process as best we can. I would like to highlight three key elements. Firstly, public funding should be allocated to investment in small-scale fisheries in the future. Improvements in energy efficiency and the introduction of new technologies will not be possible without support in the sector. Secondly, funding opportunities for RDI activities and pilot projects need to be improved. Testing and scaling technologies are crucial for bringing new solutions to the market. Thirdly, we need effective financial instruments for larger players as well. Loan guarantee instruments are key, as many actors will not be able to access loan financing without risk sharing. The impact of the crisis in the Middle East on fuel and other input prices is worrying, especially if the situation persists, as Italy pointed out. This further underlines the need to accelerate the energy transition and reduce dependence on fossil fuels. Now is the time to move from words to actions. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you, Sari. We now have Portugal, followed by Croatia and then Latvia.
Thank you very much, Chair, Maria, Commissioner, colleagues. I would like to compliment the Bulgarian Minister and welcome the Dutch Minister. The issues that we're facing are worsened by the start of the war in the Middle East. We all know that this has strongly impacted the cost of the Union's ageing fishing vessels. In this context, measures aimed at improving energy efficiency cannot be dissociated from the renewal and modernization of vessels. It's not enough to simplify, but we need to amend legislation and we need to act immediately. And therefore, we advocate for the creation of exceptional and urgent measures consistent with the current reality, namely amending the regulation of the MFAF in order to allow support for the replacement of hulls with other new shapes, lighter materials, less friction, and to install new and more efficient propulsion systems that will produce fewer emissions of polluting gases. We also need to amend the rules for fleet capacity in order to allow for modernization intended to improve working conditions on board, and that this may, if necessary, increase engine power to ensure the stability of the vessel. Only in this way will it be possible to guarantee at the same time the safety of the vessel and of the crew. In this context, I have to mention the situation of the Madeira black scabbard fish fleet, which operates with hook and line fishing gear in an old and obsolete wooden vessel, lacking minimum living conditions. We have €5 million that are waiting to be allocated, and this is because of EU legislation that needs to urgently be amended. To do so, we need support to adapt operating costs, as happened in 2022. We also believe it important that we should have a European framework for implementing and for coordinated action. We have a CAP and we have a common fisheries policy, so that it's important that we coordinate all of this so as to avoid distortions due to the internal market. And it is also crucial to develop new and innovative technologies in order to increase energy efficiency, creating prototypes, and helping ship builders to focus on new scientific discoveries so that the fishing sector can enjoy further funding. It is absolutely crucial that, in view of the Horizon Europe objectives, so that we can achieve all of these objectives. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now the floor goes to Croatia and then Latvia, followed by Spain.
Thank you very much, Maria, Costas, colleagues. We thank the Presidency and Italy for opening the debate on these important issues. As regards regulatory changes and simplification, the current legislative framework significantly limits the implementation of the energy transition. Such regulatory barriers currently also bear upon support for investments in safety, working conditions, energy transition, and intergenerational renewal in the fisheries sector, which in practice do not have a direct impact on the fishing effort or vessel capacity. In this context, it is essential to provide the necessary preconditions for modernization of the fishing fleet through investments in fishing vessels in the future, but also in the current fund. When it comes to investment and financing, it is essential that the future MFF follow the set priorities and energy efficiency objectives without jeopardizing profitability, viability, and the standard of living of the sector. Significantly more attractive co-financing rates also need to be ensured. We also believe that it is time to open up space for fleet renewal through the possibility of support for the construction and acquisition of new vessels that are energy independent from fossil fuels. In aquaculture, it is necessary to provide funding for strategic projects aimed at developing sustainable integrated systems that should be based on natural energy sources. In relation to future business models, a stronger progress in the development of the concept of energy transition in aquaculture or the segment of fishing infrastructure can also be achieved through the financing of public-private projects, enabling return through aquaculture products that are marketed to public institutions such as kindergartens or hospitals. We support Italy's initiative on measures to address the fisheries and aquaculture crisis, and we can, in principle, agree that the proposed measures would contribute long-term to resolving the situation. However, we consider it essential to react immediately in response to the current energy crisis, which is progressing rapidly. And in this sense, we consider it necessary to put in place emergency measures to support the sector. Therefore, in addition to the measures proposed in this initiative, which have a long-term impact, we invite the Commission to consider introducing emergency measures to address the crisis already now, namely the provision of support or compensation under the current fund pursuant to Article 26 through the adoption of a Commission implementing decision establishing the occurrence of an exceptional occurrence causing a significant market disruption. And second, introduction of appropriate temporary state aid rules, such as we had temporary crisis framework in the light of the COVID-19 outbreak and Russia's aggression against Ukraine. This would allow for a certain flexibility provided for in state aid rules, including a shorter time for the notification of aid to the Commission, which would consequently allow member states to react immediately to the crisis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Now the floor goes to Latvia and then Spain, followed by Greece.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioner, colleagues. Thank you, the Presidency, for having this discussion. In response to the first question, amendments to the MFF regulation should be supported. However, such proposal would be already overdue, so we cannot expect a significant breakthrough in the energy transition. It is important to eliminate the administrative burden and unfavorable conditions in engine replacement. The purchase of new fishing vessels must be permitted and the intensity of support for energy transition must be increased. We believe that greater emphasis on these objectives should be placed in the support for the next programming period, 28 to 34. Therefore, the MFF for 28-34 must secure significantly higher allocated funding for CFP interventions. The current 62% reduction is insufficient to achieve the objectives. The CFP will not be able to compete with other priority areas within national plans, given that the viability of national fisheries is directly dependent on CFP conditions. We must not forget that CFP support is also needed for other priorities, not only energy transition. It is high time to significantly reform the CFP, as current policy has led to exorbitant energy transition costs for EU fleet, and the planned targets being difficult to achieve. Regarding the second issue, the fisheries and aquaculture alone will not be able to implement the financially costly energy transition. The costs are too high for the private sector. Sufficient public funding and support intensity are necessary. Since new energy transition technologies are cross-cutting, the transition is most likely to occur simultaneously with other sectors, adapting the new technologies to the specific needs. It is important that any barriers hindering the energy transition are eliminated within the CFP. Adequate public support must be ensured for both innovation, development and knowledge transfer, especially for replacement of old fishing vessels and adaptation of port infrastructure. Regarding the third question, Member States can only assume appropriate responsibility if adequate funding is provided. Unfortunately, the current MFF proposal for 28-34 does not reflect this. Therefore, I believe that the primary focus at this time should be on ensuring sufficient financial and administrative support for the sector.
to address the challenges of the coming period, including energy transition. In conclusion, I would like to thank our Italian colleagues for the document. Latvia certainly supports and endorses it. We urge the Commission to take immediate steps to stabilize the very complex situation we find ourselves in. Thank you.
Thank you, Armand. And now the floor goes to Spain, then Greece, and then Sweden. Luis, you have the floor.
Thank you, Maria, and thank you, Commissioner Costas, for introducing the topic of energy transition in this debate, and for Francisco for the AOB that was included in this of crucial importance. Allow me to personally welcome Ivan and the Bulgarian minister, and Silvio from the Netherlands, who have joined us. We've been talking about two topics together. One of them is structural, the energy transition, and the other one is conjunctural. And given the current situation regarding the fishing industry and the Middle East, in relation to the energy transition, in July 2023, we already met. There was a council of ministers of informal nature, and it was dedicated specifically to this very difficult topic. Fishing with vessels in the 21st century and vessels that are from the 20th century is extremely difficult. But we must ensure energy transition and security while ensuring adequate amounts of catches. We therefore need to make sure that vessels are safer for crews and more comfortable for them. And this can be done with the current means, and I therefore agree with the proposal made by Italy, and that has been supported by many ministers, with the vessels that are 24 metres long. But the changes need to go deeper. The proposal that has been presented is 1/3 of the EMFA funds that we had before the 28th. So it's impossible. We'll have to use other funds, I'm thinking of the European Investment Bank, to ensure this public and private investment that is absolutely essential in order to renew and modernize the sector, which is so important. And another very serious point is that we are lacking a crisis fund as we have for the agricultural sector. We don't have this for the fishing sector, and this is what we need from the Commission. The increase in oil prices calls for urgent actions from the Commission so that similar actions are taken as were implemented during COVID to facilitate, for instance, to facilitate the situation. Spain has adopted emergency measures to counter the effects of increasing oil prices and to ensure the survival of this sector. We need to maintain prices lower and ensure that fishers can go out at sea. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis. The floor now goes to Greece. Dear President, dear Commissioner, I'd like to also welcome on my side the colleagues from Bulgaria and the Netherlands. The energy transition in fisheries and aquaculture is an important step for achieving the goals for competitiveness and sustainability in the sector. However, we are at a very demanding point where the depletion of fossil fuels and an aging fleet is posing many challenges, especially for coastal fisheries. That's why transition needs to be realistic, taking into account the differences between member states and also between different parts of the fleet. We can support the alignment with the policy on the environmental goals of the EU, and the condition that it's going to be accompanied with various social support measures for fisheries communities, like special funding programs for upgrading fleets in coastal areas. On a regulatory level, it's important to keep the right flexibility as part of the CFP in order to update the fleet, but also adopt vessels of low emissions. At the same time, we need to guarantee that the relevant regulation does not impose further burdens on investments. It is also important to clarify that the adoption of such investments do not reduce to a further reduction in capacity. When it comes to funding, as also pointed out in the Presidency note, it requires the use of public and private investments and partnerships. Particularly important is the investment on port infrastructure and at the same time low emission fuels, as well as the upscaling of and testing of different technologies for different parts of the sector. At the same targeting, the financing should also take into account the level of technological readiness and preparedness, as also shown by the Presidency, with the use of mature solutions as well as supporting further research and development. Particular importance needs to be given to small-scale coastal fisheries, which requires targeted support. This is even more important, especially with the recent increase in fuel prices, as also pointed out by Italy. This recent development highlights the importance of energy transition, but also the need for immediate support of the sector. I'd like to repeat that any initiatives need to be accompanied with the necessary flexibility for member states in order to be able to be adapted to the national specificities. The sustainability of the sector and the competitiveness need to go hand in hand. Thank you. Thank you, Kostas. Sweden, Malta, and then Slovenia. Peter, you have the floor.
Thank you, Maria, and thank you, Kostas. The EU's fishery and aquaculture sectors are dependent on making the energy transition, both to compete and deliver a stable food production across the EU. This is part of strengthening the sector's overall resilience and critical priority. And is a critical priority. Healthy marine ecosystems and sustainable management of fish stocks, ensuring long-term productivity and stability for the sector, are vital to ensure the profits needed to make the transition. In addition, measures to strengthen the entire blue value chain are necessary to improve overall profits. Economic incentives, including support for innovation, knowledge sharing, accessible charging infrastructure, and investment support, where needed, are necessary. Economic policy instruments that promote the use of renewable energy, such as ETS2, can also be an important tool. When it comes to public support, it is important that available instruments are targeted to reduce emissions as much as possible. Stronger links within the wider maritime sector can also speed up technology transfer. We must reduce the gap between innovation and practical application. New technologies must be translated into real-world use on vessels in ports as soon as they become available. Lastly, to ensure that the transition strengthens the long-term sustainability of the sector, we need to reduce the sector's dependency on fossil fuels, while at the same time maintaining the balance between fishing opportunities and the capacity of the fleet. The ETP and its support groups have provided important insights in both the challenges and the opportunities ahead. I would like to thank the Commission for its efforts in this area, and I look forward to the climate roadmap later this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Now the floor goes to Malta, followed by Slovenia, and then Bulgaria. Anton, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for this important discussion. particularly in the light of the current geopolitical developments, which continue to increase pressure on several sectors related to agriculture as well as on the fisheries sector in Europe. Malta believes that the transition towards sustainable energy in the fisheries sector must be realistic. The core of support to fleets and fishermen should be flexible in order to address the operational realities of our fleet as well as market volatility. At present, fully carbon-neutral technologies are not yet available, particularly for small-scale vessels, which are a pillar of our artisanal sector. Therefore, there is also a need for greater regulatory flexibility, focusing on efficiency improvements and the gradual adoption of technology. At the same time, Malta stresses the need to ensure a level playing field. We insist that, against this background, European fishermen should not be disadvantaged compared to fleets from third countries. The principle of a level playing field should be reflected in concrete terms, including through equivalent standards for imports. In this regard, Malta encourages the Commission to further strengthen the fisheries policy framework within our FMOs, such as GFCM, in order to ensure that all our efforts are not undermined by lower standards applied by third countries. Financial support is a crucial element in the transition towards the use of sustainable energy by our fleets. Therefore, European fisheries funds should support fleet modernization and innovation with greater flexibility and simplification. There is also a need to remove existing obstacles such as low co-financing rates and restrictions that limit access to funding. We therefore call for more aid instruments to support fishermen, as in other crises in the past. And linked to this point, I would like to say that I sympathize with our Italian colleagues and their fishermen who are experiencing a very difficult situation, similarly to what our fishermen are currently facing. Concerning technology and infrastructure, further investment is needed in research and in pilot projects targeted at small-scale fisheries. Current technologies do not yet adequately meet our operational realities. Finally, Member States should promote a sector that is not only sustainable but also resilient. This includes support for coastal communities and consideration of increasing climate pressures. Malta remains committed to working with other Member States to move forward with a balanced, realistic and effective approach. Thank you.
Ευχαριστώ πολύ, Αντών. Ο λόγος τώρα στη Σλοβενία, ακολουθεί η Βουλγαρία και μετά η Ιρλανδία. Ματέγια, έχεις το λόγο.
Madam Chair, Maria, thank you for the floor. Commissioner, ministers. The energy transition is key to lower greenhouse gas emissions and to increase the energy efficiency and resilience of the sector. That is why we need low carbon energies and we need to go to the renewable energy sources. Careful consideration is required regarding smaller fishing communities within these times of crisis where the energy transition should not lead to the decline or disappearance of small fishing communities. Therefore, we need to think alongside the energy transition requirements how to adjust legislation in the future common fisheries policy when it comes to energy transition, to vessels, how to increase the gross tonnage or engine power. Because currently the rules of common policy doesn't allow that. We also need the common legislation framework. The Slovenian fishing fleet consists predominantly of smaller and older vessels. Therefore, two issues are crucial for us: sufficient financial resources for the energy transition, appropriate regulatory flexibility, which means that we also need to simplify the rules to implement the procedures, to have new vessels, to change the engines, and also to change the vessels for fishermen, to facilitate investments. We expect to see this in the upcoming EU vision for fisheries and aquaculture. As regards Italy's call Also in Slovenia, the fisheries sector is facing an exceptional increase in diesel prices, putting the income of businesses and fishermen at risk. That is why we need measures to implement everything, and we support also the Fund for Common Agricultural Policy, for emergency funds, to have easier absorption of funds and to also facilitate the rules when it comes to state aid. European fishermen should survive, should preserve their activities. This is also important for food and resilience of the entire EU sector. Thank you.
The floor now goes to Bulgaria, followed by Ireland and Czechia.
Dear Maria, Commissioner, colleagues, first of all, I would like to thank you for your welcome. I'm happy that after 2022, we are all in the same boat, rowing through the stormy waters of European policy. Bulgaria supports the strategic framework on the energy transition in the sector and the future vision for the development of fisheries and aquaculture by 2040. Bulgaria is facing a number of structural challenges, such as outdated and aging fishing vessels, business uncertainty, and of course, the natural specificities of the Black Sea. Our fishing vessels are fairly old, which makes investment in new technologies, more efficient energy systems and solutions that reduce emissions and fuel consumption critically important. We focus considerable attention on small-scale coastal fishing. In our particular case, it has a very important social and economic role for the country. For us, it is key to promote the development of aquaculture and the processing of fish and fishery products in order to guarantee food chains, to diversify production, and reduce the pressure on wild fish stocks. The European regulatory framework should provide this flexibility to member states and to help implement measures to modernize and adapt fishing capacity to available resources through clear, predictable and secure rules. The energy transition requires significant investments, and what other countries have share, they are rarely accessible to the smaller operators, which means that we have to make them accessible. Regional cooperation, including within the Black Sea, is essential to developing effective solutions. Bulgaria fully supports Italy's proposal. In the context of the current geopolitical environment, fuel prices are rising and the tendency is expected to persist. This increase directly makes us question the economic viability of the sector. The same applies to aquaculture and processing, where the price of fuel is a direct component of the production cost and the viability of the sector. In this context, we need a timely amendment of the European Maritime Fisheries and Aquaculture Fund regulation in order to provide the legal basis to support the sector, and we call on the Commission to ensure swift and smooth payment to beneficiaries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ivan. Now the floor goes to Ireland, then Czech Republic, and then Romania.
Yeah, and thanks, Kostas, for your introductory remarks. The current geopolitical situation has reinforced the need to transition our fisheries and aquaculture sector away from the reliance on fossil fuels. I would also like to thank Italy and fellow member states for raising on the AOB point to highlight this issue in particular, so thank you for that. We're at a point where fuel price makes it unviable for operators to fish. This has serious implications for individual fishermen and women, and indeed the processors, as well as the knock-on effect on coastal communities dependent on seafood sector and the impact on the EU's food security of itself. An amendment to the MFAF fund isn't sufficient, in my view, at this point. Our MFAF programme is fully allocated. There isn't the scope to reallocate without negatively impacting other vital programme objectives. So supports need to be put in place at EU level to bring the seafood sector through this really challenging period and ensure a level playing field across the EU. Returning then to the matter of energy transition, potential regulatory challenges will emerge in relation to rules on fishing capacity. Alternative propulsion systems require greater space on vessels. We must ensure our capacity rules are future-proof to accommodate those necessary changes. A level playing field requires a coordinated approach to the interpretation of MFAF and state aid frameworks for energy transition supports to avoid competitive distortions. On the investment and the financing side, we must de-risk private capital in coordination with state guarantees and low-interest loans to the sector. And I was interested to hear what others have said in that regard in relation to the EIB, etc. Blended finance and increased public co-funding rates will support alternative energy and efficiency retrofits. For example, demonstrator vessels in fisheries and pilot schemes in aquaculture using renewables and electrified operations will showcase the success of the energy transition in the sectors. Future funding could be targeted at ready-to-deploy technologies, prioritising fleet-wide deployment for technologies like energy monitoring, speed optimisation and efficiencies in design. Supporting battery electric and hybrid solutions for small vessels on short duty cycles and certified HVO fuel blends is a pragmatic interim measure. Longer-term research and development is needed in zero-emission fuels such as hydrogen and ammonia and in aquaculture feed food point innovations. Member States' roles in the transition include coordinating via the Energy Transition Partnership to set milestones, share evidence from demonstrations and pilots and align national actions to support the overall sector's decarbonisation. Member States can develop regional cooperation based on fuel supply corridors, port power planning and standardised interfaces and gear selectivity. Sharing demonstrator results and jointly planning renewable energy fuel hubs will support the transition across the sector. Member States can support too the differences across the different fishing fleet and aquaculture sectors by offering tailored supports and resourcing. So in conclusion, when we talk about sustainable fisheries, we are usually referring to building and maintaining the biological sustainability of our fishing stocks. However, the tools we use to harvest and process our seafood must also be sustainable in the long term. And successfully transitioning to more sustainable energy sources will be a key factor in securing the long-term viability of our sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Timmy. Then we have Czechia, Romania, and then Lithuania. Jaroslava, you have the floor.
Děkuji za slovo.
Thank you for the floor, Madam Chair. I'd also like to thank the Presidency for including this item on the agenda. On behalf of the Czech Republic, I would like to stress that we must not neglect freshwater aquaculture and its entire value chain. The future energy transition roadmap must reconcile environmental ambitions with the economic reality of operators. This is the only way to ensure a successful and viable transition. In responding to your first question, we have serious doubts as to whether the decarbonization of the sector can be achieved, in particular due to the significant reduction of funds within the next MMF. There are many investment needs and we need to very carefully choose our priorities. As regards the level playing field, we are concerned that the proposed financial architecture could lead to uneven competition among producers in the EU. In responding to your second question, the energy transition in aquaculture will require very high investments. It is not realistic to expect that SMEs will have to bear the main financial burden, and therefore we need to ensure stable, productive environment. As for business models, here the Czech Republic thinks it is crucial that both the EU and Member States contribute to reducing investment risks. The sector is very specific and we need to create an investment environment that significantly reduces risks and encourages capital inflows. We would also like to stress that energy transition must be realistic, must be fair and economically viable. Otherwise, it could jeopardize competitiveness and long-term sustainability of the entire sector. And finally, I'd like to briefly comment on the dialogue on measures for small-scale and coastal fisheries. We believe that it would be beneficial to open a structured dialogue also for freshwater agriculture of landlocked countries. Such a dialogue would allow to identify and address common challenges, taking into account the sector-specific operating conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Yaroslava. The floor now goes to Romania, followed by Lithuania, and then Austria. Violeta, you have the floor.
Dear Madam Chair, Commissioner, dear colleagues, we consider that the energy transition in the fisheries and aquaculture sector must be addressed in an integrated manner which ensures coherence between the regulatory framework, financing mechanisms, and the evolution of business models. From the perspective of the regulatory framework, it is necessary to establish a clear mechanism which is phased and predictable to allow the sector to adapt without affecting competitiveness. The reform must remain compatible with the objective of preventing overcapacity of the fishing fleet, allowing for a level playing field, and to involve adapting the compliance framework and facilitating access to innovative technologies, especially for operators in the Black Sea, where the structural contexts are quite significant. Transition finance must be based on a configuration of public investment targeted at infrastructure, innovation, and vulnerable operators, and private investment for smaller projects. As far as the future business models are concerned, European policies must reflect specificities of the Black Sea, because the sector here is more vulnerable. It is necessary to have a differentiated approach, but also urgent measures at EU level to support the sector, including facilitating access to finance, simplify the EMFAF procedures, and maintaining support schemes. Allow me to conclude by stating that Romania fully joins Italy's initiative on the need for adopting urgent measures to respond to the crisis in the fisheries and aquaculture sectors at EU level. Now, in the context of high energy prices, regional tensions, and climate change, many Romanian fishing vessels operate at low profitability, but even at a loss at times. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Violeta. The floor now goes to Lithuania, followed by Austria and then Hungary.
Madam Chair, colleagues, Commissioner, thank you, first of all, for the Presidency for the timely focus on the energy transition in the fisheries and aquaculture sector. This discussion in the Council comes at a particularly difficult time when the geopolitical situation, especially in the Middle East, highlights the sector's vulnerability to fossil fuel dependency and energy price fluctuations. Rising costs, declining profitability, and growing uncertainty have become the daily reality for the sector. Therefore, energy transition is not just a long-term climate goal or vision, it is also an urgent matter of economic resilience. Today, we need to clearly identify the main obstacles. First, regulation. The current legal framework has been designed to provide more stable conditions and is not flexible enough to respond to fluctuations in fuel prices, the impact of climate change, and geopolitical risks. Targeted simplification is needed, ensuring that the rules are fit for purpose and work in practice. Second, funding. We need to be frank. The current fisheries fund, and in particular the proposed future financial framework, which is 3 times smaller, will not ensure the effective implementation of the energy transition in this sector. With the significant decrease in funding and complex regulations, we will only be able to achieve very limited results. This means that there is a real risk that energy transition will remain a mere declaration. Our decisions must be clear. First, funding instruments must be aligned with actual investment needs. This is particularly important for the aging fleet, and the Lithuanian fleet is one of the oldest in the EU. Second, investments are needed in the area of fleet modernization, energy efficiency and alternative fuel solutions. We also need to ensure the availability of infrastructure and technologies. Third, the fisheries sector must be clearly integrated into the EU strategic investment agenda and not seen as a secondary policy area. Food security is a strategic issue and fisheries and aquaculture are an integral part of it. Finally, Member States and regional cooperation have a crucial role to play in applying differentiated solutions to different sectors and fleet segments. In conclusion, we would like to underline that if we want energy transition to be real and not just declarative, we need to act consistently by simplifying regulation, ensuring adequate funding, and base our actions on the actual situation in the sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrews. Now the floor goes to Austria, then Hungary, and then Estonia. Norbert, you have the floor.
Dear Chair and dear Commissioner, being landlocked, Austria is not directly concerned with marine fisheries, but we are committed to the sustainable fisheries policy, particularly with a view to avoiding high dependency on imports, and Austria follows all the current issues very closely. In particular, what's directly relevant to Austria is the energy-intensive areas of aquaculture production. This is especially the case with hot water recirculation systems and also such things as processing. To this end, support measures are already available in the current MFAF programme. Austria has the lowest of all shares of EU funding. We have only 0.13%, that is 6.7 million euros. It's far too low. So the needs can only be roughly covered by higher national co-financing. Now on the questions. In our view, existing opportunities to support the energy transition in the fishing sector should be fully used rather than engaging in burdensome regulatory reforms. Now, to efficiently finance the energy transition in fisheries and agriculture, we still need incentives to make energy efficiency measures attractive and to stimulate the transition to renewable energy. We should take into account the diversity within aquaculture. And in order to scale up technologies at European level, we need sufficient anchoring of this in the new European Competitiveness Fund, ECF, for 2028 plus. Also, we have to consider ownership in the sector, including in terms of what is cost-effective. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Norbert. The floor now goes to Hungary, followed by Estonia, and then Denmark. Katalin, you have the floor.
Thank you, dear Minister, dear Commissioner, Ministers. We thank the Presidency for putting this important issue on the agenda. We believe that the energy transition can only be successful if it adequately reflects the specific operation and the economic conditions of the aquaculture sector, in particular freshwater production. In this context, a successful transition requires simpler, more predictable and technological neutral regulatory environment. Reducing administrative burden is important for the sector. At the same time, it's essential to ensure a level playing field, as many others stressed that, as imported products must also comply with EU sustainability standards. We should not forget that the energy transition requires a significant investment that the sector cannot finance on its own. It is therefore crucial to ensure stable, long-term financing, as well as the efficient use of EU funds and support for productive investments. We should also avoid financing solutions that could lead to an uneven level playing field between member states. There is a need to reduce investment risk in the sector and create an environment conducive to capital inflows. In addition, regional cooperation should be strengthened, taking into account the diversity of our sector. Transition should be therefore realistic, fair and economically viable. Finally,
We would like to thank the Czech Vice Minister for raising the issue, launching a structured dialogue on freshwater aquaculture. We support all initiatives that contribute to achieving the objectives of agriculture and addressing common challenges more effectively. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Katalin. The floor now to Estonia, followed by Denmark, and then finally Slovakia. Katrin, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for including this topic into the agenda. When it comes to energy transition in fisheries, then one of the main barriers lays in the current legislation. The existing capacity and engine power ceilings are outdated and prevent fleet modernization and renewal. In fisheries managed by tax and quotas, fishing opportunities already set clear limits on effort. Replacing an old vessel with a more efficient one or using a more efficient engine does not increase pressure on fish stocks. The same applies to segments using passive gear. Secondly, as fisheries is a common policy, the financing framework must also ensure a level playing field across member states based on common rules for support and financing. We need targeted changes to the European Maritime, Fisheries and Aquaculture Fund to remove legislative barriers to financial instruments, pilot projects and support for research and development so that public funding can be used more effectively. In addition, private funding is also needed for fleet renewal and infrastructure. So the sector must have better access to loan-based financing, and an EU-level guarantee instrument is needed to attract private investments. Action is needed across the whole value chain. This includes support for demonstration projects, uptake of proven technologies, alternative fuels, and investment in ports, landing sites, and energy infrastructure. Funding should also reflect technological maturity and focus on deployment and replacement of outdated equipment where solutions are already available, and if not available, on research, development, testing and pilot projects. Thirdly, Member States should have the possibility to create predictable policy frameworks, support innovation and investment, and set long-term visibility for operators. Transition should be environmentally ambitious, but also economically realistic. Practical solutions are often best developed at sea basin level, where Member States face similar challenges. The Commission should give greater weight to the common positions developed through regional cooperation. Finally, there is no single transition model for all fisheries and aquaculture. Different fleet segments and production systems face different technological and economic realities, so Member States need flexibility to reflect that. And last but not least, we have also joined the Italian AOB and support the elements outlined there in the background paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Katrin. We now have Denmark and then finally Slovakia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Denmark welcomes the discussion on how to encourage green energy transition in the EU fisheries and aquaculture sector, and how to overcome the challenges. This is, of course, even more necessary in the current geopolitical situation with very high energy prices. The energy transition is an important part of ensuring sustainable fisheries, both with respect to environment and economy. And it is essential to keep a focus on long-term solutions to ensure competitiveness and green transition. In this context, the involvement of stakeholders is key. The role of the Energy Transition Partnership for Fisheries and Aquaculture is important. Its contributions, experiences and good examples must be brought forward. Moreover, regional cooperation for common solutions to common challenges within a sea basin could be facilitated further at EU level. For this effort to succeed, the legal framework of the common fisheries policy must support the green transition, including energy transition, and unnecessary obstacles in the path for the energy transition should be removed. Finally, in this context, simplification of the CFP remains important. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Soren. And last but not least, Slovakia. Monika, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
The fisheries and aquaculture sector in the EU faces challenges that are currently hindering its successful transition to renewable and low-carbon energy sources. We therefore welcome this timely discussion and are ready to support initiatives that will have a positive impact on the development of this sector and its financing. First and foremost, we consider it important to complete the evaluation of the implementation of a common fisheries policy and the subsequent revision and simplification of the regulatory framework. However, the key issue remains the future financing of the sector. We consider it essential to secure a sufficiently robust budget at the EU level to successfully implement this transition. In this context, the specific characteristics of freshwater aquaculture and the need to ensure adequate financial resources for the transformation of this sector should not be overlooked. As for future business models, we see the solution in supporting local production, which significantly reduces the carbon footprint and contributes to the development of local communities linked to this sector. Slovakia views this situation in the aquaculture sector similarly to Italy and supports the need to seek effective solutions to mitigate the impacts of rising energy prices, particularly fuel costs. We would therefore also like to call on the Commission to consider more flexible options for utilising the current fisheries fund, including measures that would allow for a response to the extraordinary increase in operating costs, promote the modernisation and energy efficiency of farming facilities, and ensure the continuity of production while taking due account of the specific characteristics of inland aquaculture. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. The floor now to the Commissioner. Dear Commissioner, you have the floor.
Thank you, Maria. Dear Ministers, thank you for this enriching debate. Indeed, the topic of energy transition and the issues raised by Italy, Latvia and other member states under the AOB are very closely linked. Let me address some of the most recurring comments I have heard, as well as react to the calls for urgent action to address the energy crisis. Indeed, our operators in the fishery and aquaculture sectors are impacted by the outbreak of the war in the Middle East and the subsequent increase of fuel prices. We are monitoring very closely and on a daily basis the developments and their impacts on the fisheries market, and we stand ready to act decisively. Specifically, my services are working on solutions within the MFAF framework, and I intend to propose to the College the triggering of the mechanism provided under Article 26(2) of the MFAF regulation. The Commission services are already working to this end. We are also exploring suggestions that were submitted by the representatives of the sector during a meeting that we had last Friday, and of course we will very carefully examine additional ideas mentioned by you today. The objective is to enable the Member States to promptly support affected operators in these difficult times. MFAF is a shared management programme, and therefore, in tandem with the Commission, Member States also need to take the necessary steps for implementing swiftly any crisis tool and measures that can alleviate the negative impact of the sector and ultimately on our food security. In the context of this joint effort, allow me to recall our collective responsibility of ensuring fair competition and a level playing field within our single market. During the 2022 energy crisis, we have demonstrated our ability to act rapidly, and you can rely on the Commission to respond with the same urgency and commitment to the current situation. As shown in the past, the Commission stands ready to react quickly to address any serious disturbance of the economy, including by using the flexibility provided by the existing state aid toolbox to protect the level playing field in the single market where necessary. As already indicated, the Commission is following the development in the relevant markets closely, and specific questions concerning the state aid should be discussed directly with the Executive Vice President Ribera. But it is also important to learn from each crisis. The energy transition remains pivotal for the resilience of the fisheries sector and hence for its competitiveness. Only with energy transition we have a prospect to build a resilient and sustainable future. Dear colleagues, the path will be challenging and will require multiple approaches and flexibility to account for the diversity of our sector and our sea basins. I am fully committed to work very closely with all of you. We will navigate the current difficulties to ensure stability and resilience across our single market. This is how we will reach our goals and our ambition to achieve an energy-efficient and climate-neutral sector by 2050, thus strengthening its resilience. Thank you very much for your attention.
Dear Commissioner, I would like to thank you for the information that you just given about activating this regulation on the fund with the goal of the immediate and support of the fisheries sector when it comes to the increase in fuel prices due to the Middle East crisis. Finally, I would just like to formally conclude these agenda items as follows. The Council has exchanged views on the energy transition in the EU fisheries and aquaculture sectors, providing guidance to the Commission's energy transition roadmap. The ministers have recognized that the fisheries and aquaculture sectors of the EU is at a very crucial juncture and faces some important structural and geopolitical challenges. At the same time, it is obvious that we have a common understanding as for the importance of the goal of the transition in the fisheries and aquaculture sector for its future sustainability. In order to achieve this goal, and in order for the sector to contribute to achieving this goal of climate neutrality by 2050, we need to have targeted initiatives and interventions in a series of important sectors. The need for targeted amendment of the framework for the CFP, including also the Fisheries and Aquaculture Fund, which can be an obstacle to activating the fund, but also the use of instruments, financing instruments during the current and the new programming period, also the promotion of research and innovation, and the use of cost-effective technologies, the promotion of regional cooperation, and the level playing field within the EU, but also with third countries. Finally, it was also highlighted that this transition must be accompanied with a broader support for the sustainability of the sector, including the renewal and the modernization of the fleet, the improvement of working conditions, but also the attractiveness of the profession for future generations. So I would formally conclude these agenda items as follows. The Council has exchanged views on the energy transition in the EU fisheries and aquaculture sectors, providing guidance to the Commission's energy transition roadmap. The Council has also taken note of the information provided by Italy with regards to its call for urgent action in order to address the crisis in the EU fisheries and aquaculture. Dear colleagues, for the next item on the agenda, the Commission has requested an AOB item in order to inform on the implementation dialogue on small-scale and coastal fisheries. which took place in November 2025. The Commission has shared a note on the subject that you can find in document 7693/26. I would like to invite now the Commission to present the subject. Dear Commissioner, dear Kostas, you have the floor.
Ευχαριστώ, Maria.
Thank you, Maria.
I would like to thank you for adding this point to the agenda of today's Council and for the opportunity to present the outcome of the implementation dialogue dedicated to small-scale and coastal fisheries. I hosted this important exchange with stakeholders on the 24th of November 2025. It gathered representatives of small-scale fishers, member states, advisory councils, fisheries local action groups, social partners and civil society, along with previous commissioners Carmen Uvela and Maria Damanaki. Small-scale and coastal fisheries represent around 3/4 of the active EU fleet and more than half of total employment at sea. They are vital to coastal and island communities. They preserve traditional knowledge, cultural heritage. They enhance local food supply and support social cohesion, where alternative economic opportunities are often limited. However, this segment is structurally vulnerable, with many vessels operating with minimal margins of profitability declining in several regions. The dialogue confirmed that small-scale fishers are facing growing cumulative pressures, including climate change and stock displacement, invasive species, particularly in the Mediterranean Sea, rising energy costs, market volatility, increasing competition for maritime space and access to the resources. Innovation and generational renewal were seen as key to the future of the sector. The importance of ensuring a level playing field, both within the Union and vis-à-vis third country operators, was also strongly emphasised, with participants pointing to the inconsistent implementation and enforcement of existing provisions. Another central message concerned administrative complexity, particularly in accessing our European Maritime Fisheries and Aquaculture Fund. Simplification, predictability of funding calendars, and better alignment of support measures with the operational realities of small-scale fleets were identified as priorities. For this reason, I have instructed my services to work on a possible targeted revision of MFAF. Environmental pressures and sustainability concerns were identified as intensifying risks for the sector, and environmental ambition was broadly supported. However, stakeholders stressed that measures, including marine protected areas and decarbonisation policies, must be implemented in a proportionate manner, reflecting the limited environmental footprint of small-scale fleets. Access to fishing opportunities and the allocation of quotas were among the most sensitive and pressing issues raised, including a request for preferential access for small-scale and coastal fisheries to the 12 nautical mile zone. Stakeholders stressed the importance of transparency and predictability in allocation systems and called for the full and effective use of the criteria provided under the Common Fisheries Policy, including environmental and social considerations. This last message actually echoes the communication for enhanced transparency and good governance in the allocation of fishing opportunities by member states. This so-called Vatemenku on Article 17 of the CFP, published in November 2025, was a commitment from the 2023 Fisheries and Ocean Package and the 2025 European Ocean Pact. Conscious of Member States' prerogatives, the Commission invites Member States to reflect on and improve current allocation practices by improving transparency and communication, promoting sustainable fishing practices, and supporting small-scale and coastal fishers. The communication and the dialogue took place at an important moment with the ongoing evaluation of the Common Fisheries Policy Regulation and the preparation of the Vision 2040 for Fisheries and Aquaculture. The reflections shared by stakeholders confirm that small-scale and coastal fisheries are central to the resilience of our coastal communities, to food security, and to the sustainability of our blue economy. The Commission will use the outcomes of the dialogue to inform ongoing analytical work and future policy development, including the possible revision of the Common Fisheries Policy Regulation. I also expect that the communication on allocation of fishing opportunities would serve as a basis for further dialogue and reflections with and within Member States. I very much count on your follow-up. Our objective is clear: to ensure that existing tools are implemented effectively, that support reaches the small-scale fishers, and that environmental sustainability and economic viability go hand in hand. Nothing in that respect can be done without your commitment and determination. Therefore, I look forward to working closely with all of you to ensure that small-scale and coastal fishers continue to play their vital role in the European Union. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kostas. I understand that there are some colleagues who would like to intervene. I would like to ask everyone to stick to the time limit of 1 minute. The floor now goes to Spain and then Sweden, followed by Portugal. Luis, you have the floor.
Sí, María, muchas gracias.
Thank you, Maria, and my thanks go to the Commission for the information provided on small-scale and coastal fisheries. We believe it's important to advance the simplification of the regulatory framework. We also believe that we should also focus on generational renewal, digitalization, and collaboration between local administration and scientific community. But for all of this to be achieved, we need more funding. As we recalled in the previous item, the proposals of the European Commission for the 2028-2034 period are clearly insufficient to respond to this and other objectives that we have just talked about. Obviously, regarding the financial objectives, we need to focus on the political nature and the strategic nature of this in view of 2040. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis. We now have Sweden, followed by Portugal, and then France. Peter, you have the floor.
Thank you, Marianne. Thank you, Kostas. I fully agree that small-scale and regional coastal fisheries are essential for both the local economy, culture, and food security. But first and foremost, healthy fish stocks are crucial. And I also want to emphasize the need to manage seals and cormorant populations to reduce negative effects on fish stocks. As we have said many times, we need a general hunting on the great cormorant and to be able to sell seal products. Finally, I want to stress the need for generational renewal and innovation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. We now have Portugal, followed by France, and then Latvia. José Manuel, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. I would also like to welcome the Commissioner's initiative to hold a specific consultation on small-scale fisheries, which is crucial for our competitiveness, but also for our economic and social cohesion of the many coastal communities, including the outermost regions, many of which depend on small-scale fishing. It is therefore crucial, because of this specificity, that we have preferential treatment for them to ensure the continuity of small-scale fishing in order to improve their resilience, their contribution to the fishing products that provide huge variety, quality and freshness, and that usually are caught in a sustainable manner that is respectful of the environment. It attracts tourists, it improves the economy, and it also ensures generational renewal at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now the floor to France, then Latvia, followed by Italy. Catherine, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much. France welcomes the dialogue engaged by the Commission to support small-scale fishing, and we think that we need to ensure the resilience of small companies in the light of climate change and also fluctuating economic conditions. Negotiations and discussions show us that it is necessary to adopt CAP to go through the necessary transition, the decarbonisation of the fleet, but also fishing techniques, and to ensure the foreseeability and the operationability of standards. It's equally important that we don't pit different parties one against another, but we've got to take into account sustainable long-term fishing activities, and small-scale fishing is a real challenge, and I think we need to evaluate this better. With regard to the allocation of quotas, transparency of methods is important, and the strengthening of socio-economic and environmental measures, and we also need to take into account new criteria for the reallocation of criteria for the allocation of resources, decarbonisation, research, etc. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Catherine. And now the floor to Latvia, followed by Italy and then Greece. Armand, you have the floor.
Thank you. What matters, the coastal fishing sector is very important to us, as it is closely linked to the development and sustainability of life in our coastal regions. This is why we oppose excessive requirements for this sensitive, low-impact fleet segment, which are often disproportionate. It is clear that at the regulatory level, the administrative burden must be significantly reduced so that our fishermen can actually fish instead of thinking about complying with the myriad of requirements. Similarly, small-scale coastal fishing requires public support that stimulates development. Unfortunately, the current MFF proposal for 28-34 is absolutely insufficient. For the sector to thrive and survive, we must make serious investments in increasing the added value of catches and in innovative solutions, as well as devote greater attention to addressing the long-standing seal and cormorant problems, including promotion of popularity of fishing. Only in this way will we preserve coastal fisheries for future generations as a sustainable and viable sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Armand. Now Italy, followed by Greece, and then Ireland. Francesco, you have the floor.
Thank you, Maria, and thank you to Commissioner Cardis for having explained very clearly what are the intentions that you'd like to develop. I'd also like to thank our colleagues, because in the earlier discussion, in my view, we've actually strengthened the need for a sustained and urgent negotiation on fishing in general, and particularly coastal and small-scale fishing. And we shouldn't look at just emergencies, but we need to look at invasive species as well, and the need to have sufficient funds to be able to carry out these policies. This is essential so that we can deal with a situation which is becoming devastating at the European level when it comes to the crisis of fisheries. The other aspect is the need for simplification. Less bureaucracy will mean we'll be able to better achieve the objectives, and I hope that we will take this also into account when we're talking about bureaucracy at the European level.
Thank you very much, Francesco. Now the floor goes to Greece, followed by Ireland and then Bulgaria. Costa, you have the floor. Madam President, dear colleagues, we thank the Commission for the information and for its efforts to support small-scale coastal fisheries, which constitutes a significant part of our fishing fleet and a key priority for our country. It is our firm position that scientific advice must be respected whilst taking into account the social implications, so as to ensure the long-term environmental and socio-economic sustainability of the fisheries sectors in our coastal communities in an increasingly complex and uncertain global landscape. Thank you. Thank you, Kostas. Now the floor to Ireland, then followed by Bulgaria and then Finland. Timmy, you have the floor.
Thanks very much, Maria, and thank you, Costas, too. I welcome the publication earlier this month of the conclusions of the implementation dialogue for small-scale and coastal fisheries, where, Commissioner Caddis, you were instrumental in facilitating that. Now, in relation to the next steps, I note that the Commission intends to make use of the outcomes of this dialogue to assist small-scale and coastal fishermen and women who are integral to our coastal communities, with over 80% of the Irish fleet consisting of inshore vessels under 12 metres. This sector is vital to the economic, social and indeed the economic fabric of rural, coastal and island communities. Inshore representation has improved significantly in Ireland in recent years, with active participation in consultative processes influencing the management of Ireland's fish quotas within national policy. And while I acknowledge that the inshore sector faces ongoing challenges, I wish to stress that the voices of inshore fishermen and women are being heard, and Ireland remains steadfast in its commitment to ensuring the sustainability of small-scale and coastal fisheries both nationally and at EU level. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Timmy. The floor to Bulgaria, Finland and then Romania. Ivan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Maria. Commissioner, colleagues. For understandable reasons, more than 90% of the Bulgarian fishing fleet is made up of small vessels engaged in really small-scale coastal fishing. And we know what the challenges are. We know their names. It is geopolitics, no level playing fields, economic vulnerability, socio-economic crisis, climate change, and competition in maritime space. So, to ensure the survival of the sector, we need predictable, sustainable support, the lightest of administrative burdens possible, easy financing instruments so that we can support small-scale coastal fishing without placing any hurdles in its way. And again, finally, it is necessary to adopt a regional approach. I mean, the Black Sea is one thing, and so the 2040 vision for fisheries and aquaculture should reflect that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ivan. We now have Finland, followed by Romania, and then Malta. Sari, you have the floor.
Thank you to the Commission for raising this issue and organising this dialogue. Small-scale fishing is very important for Finland as it constitutes a significant part of our fisheries. I would like to point out that in Finland, small-scale coastal fishing and offshore fishing by trawlers complement each other. There is no contradiction between them. From the Finnish point of view, the biggest problems for small-scale coastal fishing pertain to the strongly strengthened populations of seals and cormorants. Due to the damage caused by them, the yield of coastal fishing has gone down. We expect solutions from the Commission to this. For the future development of small-scale fishing, it is essential to support the energy transition of fishing and to ensure that the administrative obligations remain reasonable. Thank you.
Thank you, Sari. We now have Romania, followed by Malta, and then Croatia. Violeta, you have the floor.
Doamnă președintă, domnule comisar, dragi colegi.
Madam Chair, Commissioner, dear colleagues, Romania appreciates that the socio-economical relevance and increased exposure to external factors in the Black Sea region cannot be underestimated, especially due to the high costs, including energy and volatility of catches. The sector's profitability is limited. In the context of increasing pressures on maritime space, ensuring access to coastal waters is essential to maintain the viability of the sector. Now, given the current economic difficulties, but also the regional context, it is really necessary to facilitate access to finance, simplify procedures, and maintain the support mechanisms also for supporting generational renewal. And this is why Romania supports a regulatory approach at regional level, which is based on sound scientific data and appropriate management plans. Allow me to thank you, dear Commissioner, for your visit in Romania, which we understand gave you both the possibility to get first-hand information in a useful manner on the coastal fishing at the Black Sea. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Violeta. We now have Malta, then Croatia, and then Belgium. Anton, you have the floor.
Grazie, President.
Thank you, Chair. Malta believes that small-scale fishing should be safeguarded given the low environmental impact and its key role in food security. This is a strategic sector for Malta, and therefore future policy should take socio-economic realities into account and avoid a one-size-fits-all approach. With regard to the energy transition, Malta supports the objectives but emphasizes as well the need for flexibility and technological neutrality, with support for modernization and efficiency improvements where necessary. At the same time, the continuously rising fuel costs and the impact of invasive species are placing significant pressure on the sector, putting its viability at risk. Therefore, there is a need for increased investment in skills, generation renewal, and simpler and more accessible funding for small-scale fishermen, together with greater flexibility in state aid. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anton. The floor now goes to Croatia. I do apologize. Croatia, Belgium, and then Estonia. David, you have the floor.
Hvala. Mali priobalni ribolov.
Small-scale coastal fisheries account for around 90% of the Croatian fleet and contribute less than 3% of total landings. Coastal fisheries in Croatia play a key role in preserving coastal and island communities, while at the same time facing challenges such as an aging fleet. Furthermore, environmental changes have a significant impact on catch composition and volumes. Economic instability, which has further intensified in 2026, requires additional attention and the need to identify measures that will ensure the survival of fisheries. We therefore consider that it is necessary to explore mechanisms that will enable flexibility and a rapid response to economic and environmental challenges which are expected to persist in the future. As regards fishing opportunities, we appreciate the efforts of the Commission and recall that the allocation of fishing opportunities within Member States is a matter of national competence. This is a very complex issue which needs to be considered from a broader perspective, where the historical context and the dynamics of individual fishery segments are extremely important elements. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Then it's Belgium, Estonia, and then Slovenia. Bert, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Dear Commissioner, you are quite right to enumerate all the challenges that European fisheries are facing. And we see the migration of fishing stocks as a consequence of climate change. And we are noticing the need to innovate and to improve working conditions on board to attract younger people. But let me stress one thing. These challenges are not specific to small-scale coastal fisheries, but they apply to other parts of the fleet too. So I ask you emphatically that we come up with proper concrete solutions and financial support for vessels longer than 24 metres. In Belgium, such vessels are owned by small family companies, and they too need support in these hard times. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bert. We now have Estonia, and last but not least, Estonia. Catherine, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We see the EU strategy for coastal communities closely linked to the EU island strategy as the concept of island proofing, as they cover similar areas and challenges. The strategy should also include inland fisheries, such as lakes and rivers, where commercial and recreational fishing remains extremely important for local communities. It should also address a major challenge that is not reflected currently in the Commission's document: conflicts with piscivores, such as cormorants and seals. In some areas, like the Baltic Sea, their impact on fish stocks already exceeds that of fisheries, and their growing population also affects aquaculture. Another important element is the need to ensure sufficient support for community-led local development in the same way as LEADER has so far. Finally, it should take into account the realities of small-scale operators and aim to reduce administrative burden through more proportionate and simplified approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. And last but not least, as we said, Mateja.
Thank you for the floor. Slovenia would like to thank the Commission for devoting attention to small-scale coastal fishing. Thank you also for the dialogue and information provided. We believe that attention should be also paid to small-scale fishing in the light of the current situation. There are rising fuel prices, and the situation in the Mediterranean is worse and worse. We must bear in mind that in some member states, such as Slovenia, small-scale coastal fishing accounts for the majority of the fishing sector, which is more than 90% in Slovenia. This represents an important component of the coastal economy and the value chain, including, for example, tourism. So the letter means that solutions to support small-scale coastal fishing should be taken into account. The vast majority in some countries of vessels are dedicated to small-scale coastal fishing. In particular, we should not impose additional administrative or financial burdens. We should not require to draw additional documents for member states that already now have 90% of small-scale coastal fishing vessels. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mateja. Thank you, dear colleagues. Dear Commissioner, would you like to add something? No? So I can conclude that the Council has taken note of the information provided by the Commission on the implementation dialogue on small-scale and coastal fisheries, which took place in November 2025. I would now kindly ask the technicians to switch off the cameras. Broadcast. Dear colleagues, we now back on public session for the last item under AOB, which concerns the need for a clear improvement and simplification of union fisheries legislation, in particular the draft weighing provisions. You have received the relevant note, which you can find in document 7820/26. I would like therefore to invite Germany to briefly present this point. Alois, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Maria. We thank the Presidency for including this item on the agenda at short notice. Reliable weighing data form the basis for robust estimates of stock and for evidence-based fisheries management. However, the industry and authorities are informing us that the new implementing regulations on the weighing of fishery products are being perceived as disproportionate and in some cases unworkable. It's not exceptional to see discrepancies exceeding 5% between weighing on board and weighing ashore. Yet we don't yet have sufficient availability of suitable locations to weigh the entire catch. The Commission's planned timetable sets out only a few months to update all Member States' sampling plans. If we want acceptance and compliance, we need workable guidelines. So this implies also to transposing the catch, and we ask the Commission to review and improve the new rules. Thank you.
Thank you, Alois. Dear colleagues, allow me to remind you that AOB items are information point only, and therefore intervention should not exceed the time limit of 1 minute. I can see that there are some delegations that want to intervene. I'm going to give the floor to Spain, followed by Malta and Sweden. Luis, you have the floor.
Gracias, Maria.
Thank you very much, Maria. I would like to thank Germany for presenting this item. We share its content, and the objective of the proposal clearly is harmonising the weighting processes, which we support. But we must take into account the diversity of fleets and fishing conditions in the Union. We therefore believe that we should carry on working for a proposal that would obtain the simplification of this text by improving its clarity and adapting it to the diverse conditions of fisheries. This is what we set out in this council, and I would like to reach a real simplification for our fishers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Luis. We have Malta, followed by Sweden, and then France. Anton, you have the floor.
Grazie, President. Malta tiħu.
Thank you, Chair. Malta takes note of the concerns raised by the German delegation and shows full solidarity with the challenges indicated. We sympathise with the position, in particular the pressures on the fisheries sector. These challenges are more significant on small-scale fishermen. Limitations of insularity and the often family-led nature of operations increase the impact of regulatory and economic burdens. We therefore support a more proportionate and pragmatic approach that takes these realities into account to ensure the sustainability and viability of the sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anton. The floor goes to Sweden, followed by Sweden and then Greece.
Thank you, Maria. Sweden agrees with Germany that current implementing a proposal on weighing is imposed disproportional burden and cost for operators and competent authorities. Sweden sees a significant need to reduce the minimum levels of inspection benchmarks. The proposed levels could undermine the current risk-based approach, central to ensuring effective fisheries controls. The proposal would mean a step backwards from progress made at EU level. It risks requiring member states to allocate a large share of control resources to low-risk fisheries. We also agree with Germany on the urgent need to ensure essential simplification and improvements in the catch systems. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. France, followed by Greece, and then Latvia. Catherine, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. La France partage les inquiétudes.
France shares the concerns expressed on this point.
Contrôle des pêches.
The revision of fish regulation, which is delegated, makes the whole process much more cumbersome, which goes against the decision of the 9th of March and the decision taken by Council. But it's not always shown in the draft of regulation and weighing. The removal of water and ice or deduction of this is something that's not very realistic. As to the catch certification, which is paperless now, is not an easy task, and also for third countries. I just reminded you that we asked for flexibility for a one-year period, which is asked by the Czech Republic and Germany. I noticed your answer, but there are difficulties that we are still encountering. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Floor to Greece. Kostas, you have the floor. Madam President, we too support the issue raised by Germany as we face similar problems in certain areas of the provisions implementation, and we in turn urge the Commission to make every possible effort to resolve them. Thank you very much. Thank you. Kostas, Latvia, then the Netherlands, and then Finland. Armand, you have the floor.
Thank you. We agree with Germany. The regulation does not seem like simplification, and it does not reduce administrative burden. We're talking about the digitalization and simplification, but instead of that, we only have more burden for the authorities. This time that will be spent on weighing the fish will also impact the quality of the fishing products. It will be lost resources, and these requirements are not adequate when it comes to small-scale fishing. It is not proportionate and a good use of resources. We would like to emphasize that this is the last minute where we can correct these issues while we're still discussing everything. We must avoid the situation where the requirements cannot be implemented in practice. It will create risk for the whole sector, and the fishers might be, in the end, not able to fulfill the requirements. The Commission has to act now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Armand. It's the Netherlands, followed by Finland, and then Croatia. Silvio, you have the floor.
I would also like to thank Germany for addressing these issues today, and we support the call to focus on the proportionality and feasibility of control measures, and also on the ambition to reduce administrative burdens for both the industry and the control agencies. It is crucial to remove unnecessary red tape, but also prevent us from adding on top of that. And with respect to the implementing act on weighing, I still have fundamental concerns that have not been addressed in the current draft. Furthermore, we should not think lightly about the impact of REM and CCTV systems. Also, the high expectation benchmark will be impossible to implement for both the industry and the control agencies. Finally, the Netherlands supports a call to action regarding catch, and I call upon the Commissioner to start working with the Member State in the short term on a broad omnibus on fisheries.
Thank you very much, Silvio. It's Sari from Finland, then Croatia, and then Portugal. Sari, you have the floor.
Tuen täysin esitettyjä.
Thank you. I fully support the concerns expressed with regard to fisheries control. The Commission must reduce the degree of detail in the weighing control regulation. The President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, and the political guidelines of the new Commission for 2024-2029 have outlined the need to simplify future EU regulation and to involve all institutions in the work on better lawmaking. In order to reduce administrative burden, the guidelines call for less bureaucracy and reporting, more trust and more effective enforcement. The Directorate General for Maritime Affairs and Fisheries should also act in accordance with the Commission's political guidelines. There is a need for greater trust in the fishing industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sari. It's Croatia, followed by Portugal, and then Poland. David, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. We recognize the added value of the catch system and new rules on weighing as important tools for traceability and fight against illegal fishing at the EU level. However, at the same time, we emphasize that their implementation in practice is very difficult and complex in an administrative manner, but also in operational level for member states with complex supply chains and inclusion of many stakeholders. That's why we think that the European Commission clarifies and concretely demonstrates how these new systems contribute to real simplification of the procedure and reduction of administrative burden. We expect clear operational, simple measure that will enable efficient implementation in the field while at the same time safeguarding the system and equal level playing field for all operators.
Thank you very much, David. It's Portugal, followed by Poland, and then Romania. José Manuel, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, Commissioner, colleagues. Regarding the control regulation, we resist the increasing complexity of the administrative burden. And this burden falls upon fishers, operators, without actually contributing to the sustainability of fisheries themselves. Portugal has small vessels that are dedicated to mixed fishing with amounts that are difficult to estimate because the new weighing rules are penalising. We have reduced crews in small-scale fishing, and the captain, in addition to participating in fishing operations and ensuring the safety of the vessel and navigation, also has to make estimates and records with margins of error, and this is very difficult to implement. And on top of that, this mustn't be our main objective. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's Poland, followed by Romania, and then Ireland. Stefan, you have the floor.
Chair, Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen, in principle, we share the view that the revised fisheries control rules, as well as the Commission's proposed implementing measures and the amended control provisions will and should significantly lower administrative and financial burden on both the fishing sector and control authorities in the member states. In our opinion, the objective of the revision of the EU fisheries control system, i.e. the simplification, has not been fully achieved. We believe that there is still a need to simplify these rules. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Stefan. The floor to Romania, followed by Ireland, and then the Czech Republic. Violeta, you have the floor.
Madam Chair, Commissioner, dear colleagues, now, taking into account that 81% of the national fishing fleet consists of vessels under 12 meters, Romania fully supports Germany's initiative concerning the need to clarify but also simplify the Union's fishery legislative framework, especially the provisions on weighing, so that errors in estimating catches below the 50-kilogram mark should not be considered serious infringement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Violeta. It's Ireland, followed by Czechia, and then Portugal.
Thank you very much, Maria, and thank you, Alice, for introducing this issue for discussion. The control system underpinning our fishing sector must be robust and effective to ensure our shared natural resources are preserved, thereby protecting the long-term future of the fishing industry. But in order to be effective, that system must follow the principle of simplification and avoid creating unnecessary administrative burdens on both operators and indeed on us, the Member States. Where the administrative burden becomes unnecessarily high, this places additional economic pressure on our sector, which is already operating in a very challenging environment, as we've already discussed earlier today. We also need to ensure there is sufficient funding available at EU to support Member States in transitioning to new and updated digital control tools. Ireland has provided feedback to the Commission where issues have arisen with existing requirements, including practical difficulties with the implementation of the catch system, and will continue to provide constructive feedback in the collective effort to ensure requirements are both operable and effective. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Timi. It's Czechia, Italy, and then Estonia. Jaroslava, you have the floor.
Thank you for the floor, Madam Chair. Thank you for including this item on the agenda. The Czech Republic wants to highlight the ongoing problems with IT catch when importing from third countries. Instead of expected simplification, it brings complications and administrative burden The launch of this system without testing is unacceptable, should not be regarded as a precedent when introducing other similar systems. We would like to appeal to the Commission to take corrective measures and to step up communication with member states to simplify and streamline the system. And with this reason in mind, we already joined a letter of other member states to call for correction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jaroslava. It's Italy, Estonia, and then Slovakia. Marco, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, President, and I'd like to thank the German delegation for having drawn our attention to this issue. Italy is going to give its full and convinced support to this. The criticisms that have been raised by our German colleague are ones we share, and it's something our operators complain about almost on a daily basis. At the last meeting of the European Council a few days ago, heads of state and government asked for simplification. For weighing, we find that we're dealing with standards, particularly for weighing procedures, which are disproportionate, and there are certain inapplicable methods technically. For example, the deduction of ice fixed at 1%, but there is a need to have a ceiling system for each transport, and this is an administrative nightmare. These do not improve controls, but has a negative impact on the competitiveness of our company, and don't take into account the logistic and operational specificities of the sector. So I think that it's important that the Commission provide tangible corrective measures. We think that we should not continue to have an obstacle which stands in the way of the resilience of European fishing.
Thank you very much, Marco. It's Estonia and then Slovakia. Katrin, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And we would also like to thank Germany for bringing this point to the agenda. We fully support the concerns raised. In our view, it must always be kept in mind that, above all, any rule or provision has to be implementable. Unfortunately, we see that this principle is not being followed in the case of weighing rules in the Implementing Act. Our experts have been in close contact with the Commission services, but unfortunately the concerns have not been addressed. The requirements on weighing have to be balanced and feasible for both the sector and control authorities. Thank you.
Thank you, Katrin. And last but not least, Slovakia. Andres, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the German delegation for the initiative. We also recognize the need for urgent solutions regarding the catch information system. Its use causes several systemic problems, which, along with a request for a practical and effective solutions, were outlined in a joint letter from several member states, including Slovakia. We thank the Commission for its response to our letter. However, we remain convinced that it is essential to adopt effective measures to ensure a functional, harmonized system that is proportionate in terms of administrative burden.
Thank you, Andres. Dear Commissioner, would you like to react?
Ευχαριστώ, Maria. Dear colleagues, simplification, reduction of administrative burden, proportionality of the rules, compliance and competitiveness of the EU fisheries sector are key principles of the Commission's decision-making and at the forefront of our priorities. Specifically as regards simplification, having listened to you, the Parliament and the stakeholders during my visits in Member States, I have instructed my services to work on a number of possibilities to facilitate our sector, including the possible revision of MFAF and the multi-annual plans. In that respect, there will soon be a reply to the February letter received by 18 of you. As regards the revision of the control regulation, it was a challenging process that resulted in a very good outcome, of which we should all be proud. It brought much needed modernization, improvement and simplification of the EU fisheries control system. Now is the time for smart implementation, not for reopening what we achieved together. And smart implementation means working together to identify and tackle bottlenecks within the legal framework. Accurate weighing is a critical step of effective fisheries control and management. It is the basis for accurate catch registration and therefore for credible data. It is ultimately the key to a sound fisheries management and to a fair and level playing field across the Union. Over the past 2 years, we have worked closely with your administrations and with stakeholders, and with the involvement of EFCA in a very inclusive and transparent manner to prepare the draft implementing act on weighing. But I hear the concerns you expressed about administrative burden, and we will look again at this issue. At the same time, we must also recognize that the current situation with fragmented and in some cases non-compliant weighing plans and practices undermines the level playing field, jeopardizes compliance with the fishing opportunities, and weakens the CFP's ability to deliver sustainable fisheries management. Our objective is clear: ensuring robust and reliable control where there is a derogation to the general principle to weigh everything at landing by replacing fragmentation with harmonized approaches that can produce accurate results. Where possible, we introduce proportionate and simplified solutions, including for small-scale operations. I count on your continued support to reach a balanced outcome that strengthens compliance and our collective ability to manage fisheries sustainably without undermining the competitiveness of our sector. The co-legislators struck a careful balance in the revised control regulation by introducing minimum reporting obligations for recreational fisheries and for limited species, while ensuring these remain proportionate and are supported by practical tools. In this context, the Commission developed the REC fishing reporting tool that is already assisting both fishers and 13 member states, making reporting simpler and improving data quality. This is the approach we should continue to follow: effective but also workable in practice. As far as catch is concerned, catch is operational today, and more than 25,000 importer declarations have been validated in catch since the 10th of January 2026. Its use is compulsory for all EU member states and importers. It aims to better protect our market from fishery products from illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing. Catch has remained stable, adding 2,500 importer declarations per week in the past month. Beyond a digitalization effort, Catch is our first ever EU-wide real-time system to harmonize border controls across the EU. An EU-wide system also implies a new way of working together and sharing responsibility. The Commission continues to facilitate this process and regularly adjusts Catch based on user experience. To guarantee uptake by non-EU countries, we must ensure legal certainty and safeguard the integrity of Catch. And again, I count on your support in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. I can conclude that the Council took note of the information provided by Germany on the need for clear improvement and simplification of Union fisheries legislation, in particular of the draft weighing provisions. The Council also took note of the comments made by the delegations. At this point, we have come to the end of the public session, and I would like to ask the technicians to switch off the cameras.